Talk shoes. Recorded live.
Hi, everybody. It's July 23rd, 2015, and it's time for my private audio call. Tonight, our special guest speaker is, wait for it, fanfare, da-da-da-da, Steve from Orlando, who is the expert on property taxes. Hi, Steve.
Hi, Angela.
I'm so glad you came on tonight. We've been hoping and praying and that you would come on eventually, and here you are, see?
Well, yeah, I'm just an active guy, man, so I always do things, got places to go, people to see, things to do, and sometimes Thursday night, can be pretty tough, so it's not like you're maybe in the winter,
You listen to, what's his name over there, what is his name? On Thursday nights? Randy Kelton. Isn't that it?
Yeah, usually if I'm hanging out here or something, I'll pop that up, and listen to him while I'm screwing around with it. But,
He's got a good call or show.
Well, I like Randy, I like so.
Yeah. You're floating in and out, so try to be real close to your mic, okay?
Yes, ma'am. Is that better?
Yes, thank you. And the crackling seems to have gone away, so why don't you tell everybody how you got started doing this and what led to what and how many successes they've been and all like that. Then we'll have some questions, all right?
Okay.
And those of you that want to ask questions, press star 8, and that'll put you in the queue. And, okay, Steve, let's get it on.
Well, exactly where do I need to go here? Just an average everyday guy, and just knew something was wrong. Nothing made any sense. It seemed, as you went to school, you're taught you had all these rights and all that neat stuff, and when you're 13, 14, 15, things like that, riding the mini bike down the street to go to the Orange Grove and ride around it, and the cops are messing with you. You don't have blinkers and lights and a license, And I just thought, how could this be possible, But anyhow, I remember going on along, and just at times, I'm just one of those kind of guys that just wants to know what's going on, I mean, I'll take a can of her apart just to see how it works, and hopefully I can put it back together and it still works. If I've been able to do that, that's a good thing. Anyhow, just think something was really wrong, and the traffic stuff, of course, the licensing thing, got into that there about the mid-90s or so, playing around with that a little bit, and then I guess, just to make the nutshell version go, eventually the property tax thing, of course, we all know that everyone hates that, and doesn't understand it's what I think, and that's why we're having this problem with it. I had a woman that I lived around the corner from, he was telling me this one day back in the early 2000s, she'd have to sell her house. Her husband had died years earlier and all, and so she said she just had to sell it because she couldn't afford to stay there. I was like, why not? It's bought and paid off. Like, you got his electric bill and cable and telephone, right? Like, it's the property taxes. It was like $5,000 lakefront, house around the corner. And I thought to myself, that doesn't make any sense, man. Why would this woman have to be paying a tax? And why would this woman who's lived in this house for most of her adult life with her husband and raised a family there have to be moving or leaving because she can't afford to pay the property taxes? So right away you started looking into this a little bit and doing what you can. And luckily by, the late 90s, early 2000s, in that area, you had, access to the internet. So you could actually, get statutes and things and start looking through this stuff, which that's what we started doing. And, just ended up with a lot of questions, man, instead of answers. You think, you're going to read this and figure this out of how they can do this. And the code just wasn't working with what they were doing to, let's say, you're a person's home. I can't find anything that shows that you would have to owe a tax in order to own property, because your Constitution makes it clear you have the right to own property, right? I need a right.
Right.
So, jurisprudence makes it pretty clear, too, that rights can't be taxed. So, if you know that it's the right to own the property, you just can't be taxed because you own it. Same thing with the travel issue. I mean, all the issues you guys talk about are all right there pretty much. But the key is how to stop it. Well, there are ways to do it. There are people that aren't on, let's say, the tax roll. And you got to go, okay, why? How did they get there? And what did they do? And usually you just find out the rich people with lawyers who really understand how the tax code works. That's what it's all about. You got to understand how your state tax code works, man, whether you like it or not. You got to understand it well and be able to litigate it and talk about it in an educated fashion with people. You got to make the point, it's statute 1 not of says this, and therefore how you get this statute then to make this point is that you can't get this statute to work. That's the way you're going to pin these guys down, man, and it works. And it's code pleading whether you like it or not. So, right now, read the tax code. But I don't know where exactly you want to go with this. I mean, where do we want to?
Well, what did you find out? You read the tax code, and what did you discover?
Well, look, my favorite part was the assessment process under here in Florida. I think 193.011, which is the just value process. And the neat thing was the information that has to be on the form was very interesting. In order to do the assessment, according to the Florida statutes, there has to be the name of the business, there has to be the location, and then there has to be how much income was created from the property, and net proceeds sales from the property. So right away, it's like, well, hold on. Okay, so how do they make an assessment for my house here, where nothing goes on here? The only business that happens here is monkey business here, okay? But there's no license fees, there's nothing here to go on. So after years of reading the tax code, trying to figure this out, I was basically coming up with blanks. I couldn't find the process that shows how they do it to technically a non-commercial piece of property. Because the state constitution, I don't know, the hundreds of tax cases I read, all made it pretty clear that taxation is something that's done to property used in commerce. It's being used to produce income through streams of income, all that neat language you see in the revenue code. And so right away, there's a problem. And how is this possible to occur on just a regular, everyday man's quarter acre with a 3-bedroom house, a swimming pool, and a 2-car garage? How is this possible to have an ad valorem tax now? Well, go look at the definition of ad valorem tax. Matter of fact, let me see. I made a button note. I tried to make a few pages of notes, and it turned into 30 pages. So I find myself having to scroll all over the place to find the definitions and all the little things that I thought we might like to talk about. But I'll just go in the order of the notes here a little bit. It's pretty well laid out.
Okay. Well, what does ad valorem mean for those?
Well, the nutshell version, I was basically using the Black's Law 6th edition because it's the early 90s, so it's modern times here. Made it pretty clear that it's a property on an article of commerce. That's why I need to read it. It's basically a property used in commerce. That's pretty much the basic definition of what an ad valorem tax is. And it's in the Constitution, and also the legal definitions, and I don't know, here in Florida statutes, the definition of ad valorem taxes says it's the same as a property tax. That's the only definition they give in the Florida statutes, which is okay. I like that, because that's what they call it, a property tax. But really what it boils down to, from just a nutshell version, is what they're really doing is just basically falsifying records. Okay? They're not converting your property. They're just basically falsifying the records, and they're getting away with it because American people are stupid. They got no idea what taxation is. They're not taught. That's why they don't teach it to you. How come we're not taught this? How come, this is really the foundation of our freedom to make sure that everyone pays their taxes to support the wonderful property rights thing, but yet the only way we can support it is we have to steal some homes from people in order to fund the process that protects the rights. That's kind of where it is up going, which is, of course, an oxymoron. Kind of like the old Vietnam adage, in order to, save this village, we must burn it kind of thing, But really, if you go back to the very beginning, is what really got my attention when I started reading history and looking at what was going on back in the 1770s. What got the founding fathers so ticked off that they picked up muskets and started shooting redcoats? It sure could have been just over tea tax, which, of course, is the modern-day education system's version of what the Revolutionary War was all about. That King George wanted to put a tax on tea, so everyone started shooting each other over that, That is not the case at all, man. History makes it really clear that not only were the British brutal and did lots of crazy things, all you do is read the Constitution, gives you a great idea what they were doing. If you said anything about the king, they just tied you a tree and gave you 20 lashes. No due process, no hearings, no nothing, right? Soldiers could come and quarter your house and come to your farm and just take over pretty much, and the soldiers are out there eating the chickens and the eggs, and the captain's living in your house, sleeping in your bedroom, all that stuff. So, and then all of a sudden he just leaves, and you go, hey, what about my stuff? And he goes, it was the king's property. So here, the guy's his whole year of stuff has all been wiped out by the king's soldiers, and now he can't pay his usual fees to the king for being on the king's property and doing this function of growing crops or whatever he's doing. So eventually, I guess somebody said, hey, we don't need this crap. We don't need this man's taxes. We don't need this man's laws. We can do our own thing here. We could be free people. We could be just sovereigns, just like the king, and own our property locally with no feudal fees and all that kind of neat stuff, And they said, wow. So obviously they picked up muskets and started shooting redcoats. And of course, the rest is history. We have this country now where we have what is considered a loyal title with perpetuity. That's the only way you can own property in this country according to jurisprudence. So anyone who believes you don't own your property because you got some paper or whatever, then that's not really the way it works. Even the state statute would make it clear almost, you could have a bill of sale or a deed written on toilet paper, and it will stand as long as no one's contesting it, okay? Because that's how the law has to work when it comes to exchanging property and selling property. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Am I doing okay? Am I going too fast?
No, I don't think so. I think you're doing just fine.
Okay. Okay, well, let's break into the Constitution real quick. Okay, so now they wrote the Constitution, and they have this section there in Article 1, Section 8 area, and in that area, basically Clause 1 is my favorite, where it pretty much sets up what the limitation of taxation is in this country. And it says, duties, imposts, and excises. That's it. That's the situs. Now, situs is defined, and you find it all over the tax code, so it's a very important word that you understand what situs is. It's spelled S-I-T-U-S. Now, some people do situs. I do what I think is the American way. I just look at it exactly the way it's written, and it says situs to me. So anyhow, that's the key word. Your property must have a taxable situs in order to come within the scope of an ad valorem property tax. But to get back to the Constitution, Article 1, Section 8, Clause 1, duties, imposts, and excises. That's the limitation of what government in this country can use to collect taxes. That's it. Okay, so I'm trying to bring this up to a conclusion. I don't want to let it all out of the bag right away, I guess. Right?
You can do whatever you feel comfortable doing.
Well, I don't know. I'm trying to kind of explain how it works.
Yeah, I think you're doing fine.
And we could kind of look into how the tax code reads. That's the neat thing that caught my attention a lot was when you read this stuff, don't so much read it on its face for what it says or what you're seeing, but what you're not seeing is the common language. And my favorite is the actual definition of taxpayer. Anytime you look at the definition of taxpayer, do you see anything there that would lead the common everyday man of reasonable intelligence to look at that definition and say, that means me?
Yeah.
I mean, your report is pretty much taxpayer is pretty well defined as a corporation or a legal entity. That's pretty much the definition of the Board of Statutes. Something, okay, how do I become a taxpayer, you know? How does that work, you know?
It's voluntary, right?
Well, and I think it's ignorance, technically, but to me, you really can't volunteer for it if it doesn't touch you. It's like a man volunteering to have a baby, okay? He can volunteer all he wants, but he ain't going to have no baby, right?
Right.
So, to me, it's almost the exact same process here. You know, you can't just be a taxpayer because you're 17 years old, you got your first job at a Dairy Queen, and now you're filling out W-2 and 240 forms. I'm looking at the tax code. I can't find anything there that would make me believe that that's the process, that that's what it was found for. And then you have to say, okay, if that's the case, then how do they implement that through the history? I mean, like watching an old John Wayne movie, and he hired some guy out in the middle of the prairie to help him drive his herd on, you know, instead of getting 75 cents a day. What W-2 forms, what forms was he filling out, and who was he sending them to, you know? So you have to think of it. It was supposed to be that way, but it had to be that way from the beginning, right?
Right.
Property tax. Jeremiah Johnson, I always thought that was really cool. It's a great movie. You've never seen it, but it ain't Robert Redford. You know, he builds this cabin up in the middle of the mountains. Now, who pays the ad valorem taxes to, you know? And what returns was he filing on this property? Well, things like that start catching your attention, man. And when you start looking at the tax code and understanding how it works, why did they fight the revolution? And you mean to tell me they turned around and made a tax code that pretty much steals your property out from underneath that you live in order to support your freedom system? It's impossible for it to work that way. And guess what? It is not written that way at all. And when you read the normal jurisprudence under statutory construction, it makes it perfectly clear that if you're reading this law and you can't understand it, then it ain't law. Law has to be written in such a manner that the average everyday man, whoever it's supposed to apply to, knows what he's forbidden or commanded to do, blah, 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 and what the penalty is for it. And if you can't just read that straight up and get it, then there's no way it can apply to you. Kind of void for vagueness in a sense, but really it's not, because as far as the tax code goes, I don't believe it applies to the average everyday man who's just born here, gets a job. I live in a right-to-work state, so I happen to be an income tax because I'm exercising my right to have a job and have money for happiness and enjoyment, all that neat constitutional stuff, and then turn around and buy a piece of property so my woman and I have some place to sleep at, you know, and all of a sudden now I owe this commercial tax to the idiots downtown who are then going to threaten me that if I don't pay this tax, I might lose my property. And I'm like, wow, that's pretty interesting, don't you think? Is that
fair tactic? Yeah.
I mean, once again, is that how the people of the land free, home of the brave? Who enacted those laws? I mean, if it doesn't work, it just doesn't work. And the tax code, if you put it into context with, once again, your right to own property. You just can't have the right to own property as long as you pay the taxes on it. And that appears to be what they think downtown, though. And when you start putting them on the dime, asking them questions based on the tax code of how they get to where they go, they have no answers. No answers at all. Ask for these assessments under the statute and all, which is, but really, I'll tell you, first, I've had people do this. I guess I heard that thing I did with, Rob and Bo and Bronco thing, and, so people go, hey, man, they email me, go, hey, I did public records, like you said, guess what? They didn't answer me. Now what do I do? It's like, well, gee, dude, shouldn't you kind of have that all figured out before you started filing the public records class? So, anyhow, I suggest that you sit down and just start trying to make the tax code work, because you've got to do that if you want to sue them as far as like a civil rights violation, because that's really what it is. That is truly a color of law action. It's an abusive process. They're taking a code and using it for a function that it was not meant to accomplish, okay? And that equals a color of law action, which makes it fine for 42-1983.
Say that again, 42-1983? That's a lot.
Yes, yes, ma'am. That's it, ma'am.
Okay, go on.
The civil cause of action for a civil liberties suit or civil rights. And if you read this makes it clear that for any violation under color of a rules, regulations, statutes, it goes through the list of some things that most governmental entities are the key is they're just not being trained properly. And I believe it's been done on purpose, I mean, look at all the money they're bringing in. You probably figure here's what I basically made the point was here in the county, according to my property appraisers, like some 560 entries on the county tax roll. And the way I look at it, probably over 450 of them are probably false. They're people's homes. They're not commercial property. And that's the only property that could be on the tax roll. That's the whole ideology behind the tax code is commerce. Not the average everyday man who just owns a home because he needs someplace to sleep. That's a right. And that's what the homestead exemption, that's another nice thing you mind, the homestead exemption issue. That's for a taxpayer. See, here, let me go back here real first before I get there. Back in the day when the tax code was really being formulated well, probably 80% of Americans were business owners, okay? They were farmers, ranchers, lumber mills, whatever, maybe owned hardware stores in the towns and things like that. And the key was, back in those days, most people lived on the property that they had their business, that they grew their crops on and did the do for their commercial farming part of it. So, in order for the tax code to work within the scope of the Constitution, they had to put the homestead exemption thing up here, so where they made sure that the part you were living in wasn't taxable, because it's a right. They can't tax it. That's what the whole homestead exemption thing's all about. Is if you live on the property that you have the business on, you can file an application for homestead exemption. And that's what that's for. But they got the average everyday guy just filing it, because he thinks it gives him a break on his taxes, because he's declaring it as a permanent residence, which by even tax statute definition, you don't even have a permanent residence. Now, here's that leads me into something else. I know I'm getting scattered around here, but I wanted to break into the point of the homestead exemption issue, how it works with the exemption stuff.
You're doing great, so just keep going.
How goods and personal effects and permanent residence. According to the state constitution here in Florida, under Article 7, 6A, I think 4B, those are the one is the permanent residence, making it clear that permanent residence, the owner's exempt from all taxation thereon. Now, you have to remember, the tax section is only going to apply to taxpayers, but here's the key. They make it clear that the taxpayers' household goods and personal effects, which is defined in the Florida Administrative Code 12D007, I think, something like that, is that household goods is defined as food, clothing, and shelter. It makes it clear that it's the stuff that's not being used in any rental dwellings and all that kind of stuff, okay? So they make it clear that if you're a taxpayer, your household goods and personal effects and your permanent residence will be exempt from all taxation thereon. So then the key question I came back with, Matt, was, if that's the case, then how do I, the non-taxpayer, how does all the stuff that I would normally have that would be exempt if I was a taxpayer get on the tax roll? And my property got taken off the tax roll when that little conversation came up. So
That's amazing.
They don't have to have a complicated conversation. You don't go, you're taxing my right, my private property. Actually, it's another thing, too. You got to get away from the word private property. Because really, to get down to it, probably 90% of the actual real legal taxable property in the state is private property. McDonald's is private property, okay? 7-Eleven, strip malls. That is private property. So the key is non-commercial property is where you need to So if you want to do a private action and play that little game, you need to make sure that it's declared as non-commercial, not so much private. They don't care if it's declared private or not. That has nothing to do with the tax function. The key is they're just falsifying the records, and they're getting away with it because American people are stupid. They have no idea what taxation is. They have no clue how the court systems work. They have no idea how their government works on paper, and that's why it's messed up. And those same people work in government. They're the ones downtown property appraiser's office who ain't reading the tax code. They're not reading the administrative code procedures of how to levy the taxes and how they have to do the returns. They're just doing what they're being told by their bosses. They just got in there and go, okay, if you do this, and then boom, fine. Well, here's the appraiser, right? And that's all. That's exactly what's going on. And when you really hit these guys up with code, the way it's written, with the definitions and the way they work, and the tons of case law that I found, especially in Florida, which was another problem I had when I was doing my research. I could not find any cases where Joe homeowner, for lack of a better word, versus the tax collector. They'll sit here and create a deed on a man's home without a day in court and sell it, supposedly, to some idiots who think they're buying some property with a tax deed. That's illegal to pay as long, man. There's case law as long as my street that says you got to own it to sell it. And when you start looking through the tax code under the tax deed foreclosure process, third question on the tax deed application is when did the county obtain title of the property? They never did. They just created the deed and sold it. Then the idiot tax deed recipient has to go bang on your door to get you to leave so they can take the house that they bought sight unseen, no keys, no nothing. Now, when was the last time you heard a realtor or some private owner sell a house like that? Here's the deed you own. You're going to have to go to court and get these guys out of there, okay? But it's yours. I sold it to you. Here's the paper. And these tax deed idiots can run out, file them in the public records, which is a nice little bonus for the federal case on it, uttering false documents and conversion. And they did it on property the county didn't own. So it's really, what they're doing just doesn't fit the code. And all I got to really say to everybody is you got to read the code. We have a wonderful system of law. Court rules are wonderful. The rules of evidence, and we have wonderful jurisprudence that you can slam up these guys wherever to get them to do what they got to do. And it works because we've had to do it here. So,
you know, that's interesting that you say that because that's what a lot of us believe is that it's not for us, it's to keep them in line. So that's what you use it for.
Well, I believe when I heard Benjamin Franklin, I think some woman walked up to him after they signed something, and he goes, oh, what kind of government did you give us? He says, well, a republic, if you can keep it. Made it clear that everybody would have to be fairly deemed in the law, which makes perfect sense. It's like buying a car and not getting the owner's manual to it and want to know why you can't get the windows to roll down. You know what I mean? And we got a bunch of people not only walking the street with no idea what's going on, but we have Muslim people working in government that have no idea what their codes, what the statutes, how they read. They're not taught the stuff. How would they get taught it? We're not taught it. So how would they know it? Do you think just because they work down there, they really know what they're doing? I mean, you can think they're corrupt if you want. I see just more ignorant negligence, okay? Just doing what they see everybody else do at the office, right?
Well, the higher-ups know.
Well, that's why when you start popping it up in the federal court and working it based on the legal issues and have all the elements to show that they're falsifying, misclassifying property, creating false securities, fictitious obligations with their tax certificates and things where they're getting 18% interest. Isn't that neat? If I could just create out of thin air just a bunch of certificates and get people paying a bunch of money for them, that's securities fraud. And they do it all the time, and nobody even brings it up or hits them with it. You know, they just kind of like that. Oh well, government function. Just go ahead.
I think a lot of people think it's useless. You know, we've been born and raised to believe that you can't fight City Hall. In a way, it's true because they're so corrupted. But you know, you have to try, right?
Well, I don't know if it's that corrupted. I mean, don't get me wrong. There's no doubt that the system's corrupt, but when you push the system at them and you're writing your paperwork the way it needs to be written, which you follow the litigation manuals, they're excellent. All the stuff is there. You just have to get it together and read it and have access to the legal encyclopedias, whether it's American jurisprudence or corpus juris or condom. Just go read local and state taxation and American jurisprudence. And tell me if this process applies to the place that you're eating, sleeping, pooping, and screwing at, okay? There's nothing but, monkey business. Like I said, there's no way there can be a tax for that. And there isn't. The tax code doesn't even mention that. And like I was saying with the definitions earlier, if taxpayer was really meant to apply to everybody, how come the definition doesn't say the people? Or, living, breathing, carbon-based human beings walking the soil or something, to where the average man could read it and go, okay, that means they're definitely talking about me. They're not walking away with any type of doubt or scratching your head of that little term, individual, corporations, limited liability company, groups of trust, and all that other crap. How can it all be grouped together? It doesn't work. And when you start understanding how statutory construction and definitions have to be done, as you read like case law and statutory construction manual, it's clear that they're right on the money. They're talking about what they're allowed to deal with. And the individual is going to be the guy that's required to pay the tax that works for one of those corporations. That's how the definition is set for who the person, the taxpayer, is going to be. And it's in the tax code. I forget which one it is. When I get back to my notes here, which I'll go back to, the definition in the Internal Revenue Code under the crime section, where it defines exactly who the person is that has to be prosecuted for not paying the tax. And it makes it clear it's an employee of the corporation who had a duty under this act to, do the do. So the tax code really reads pretty well. And you keep it simple. Don't get overcomplicated into it. Because if you ask me, if you can't get past the taxpayer definition, there's no need to argue anything else. I mean, like I said, it's pretty obvious there, I guess. My aunt was my aunt. If my aunt had balls, she wouldn't be my aunt, right? So you kind of got to go there with a little common sense, no matter how crude that might work. But that's the way it works. Let me see what. I don't believe I don't have that definition in my notes here. So help me out here, Angela. How am I doing?
I think you're doing great. You're going a little fast. Slow it up a little bit maybe, as people have to follow along.
Go ahead and play it back if they have to, huh?
Well, that's true. It's being recorded, so we've got it for posterity. We also have the link to the audio as it did with Bo and Rocco.
Yeah, that's where I kind of pretty much tried to just lay out how I've interpreted how the tax would look and backed it with what little bit of, I have lots of case law. I just didn't want to sit there and read case law all night long on it. But
why don't you tell us about how you helped some people get their houses off the tax roll? Yeah. Have you run into anything, any variations of what you've already told us? I mean, that might have, I don't know. I'm in California. Everything is screwed up here, so I don't know. Every case couldn't be the same, or was it? Has it been?
No, they're all never the same, but there's just cases where actually what's been done has just been done almost administratively. You just went in and had a little chit-chat with the property appraiser and asked him how he believes your property fits on the assessment roll, how it comes within the scope of the definitions and the type of property that's fitted. The statute 193.052 here is the assessment process where it says all property shall be assessed according to its status as follows. Now, like we talked about status, when you look up the definition of status, which I thought I had here, and then I started, no. The status basically means a location of the business. That's pretty much what the status is defined as in the law dictionaries, roughly, the Black's Law, Bouvier. Can't believe I'm so sputtered here on the notes thing. I think I'm scared and nervous.
Well, take a deep breath, relax. There's no need to be scared or nervous, Everybody's pretty cool.
Did I do that 28-page little thing that I did? I think you have that, don't you? That might be something you might like to pass out to everybody. That's sort of what I'm looking at in some of my notes here.
You sent me something. I didn't put it up. I should have put it up. I'll put it up later.
Yeah.
Tell us about it. What does it tell us? Does it speak of your case examples or some of your successes or what?
They have a status here. Location on a Black's Law stick that's defined as locate the place of crime or business. You're
floating in and out a little bit, Steve. Are you moving around or something? Or?
No, ma'am.
You got anything in front of the phone or something?
No, it's my mouth.
Well, get it right up into the mic so it doesn't float around.
Okay. Is it okay now?
Yeah, I think so.
All right. Yeah, status is defined in Black's Law 6th edition as the location or place of a business, which determines by whether the taxing state has sufficient contact with the personal property sought to be taxed. And then the word business is, of course, one who, for tax purposes, has carried on business. On the tax statement that they send people here in my county, it actually says status address. So I was able to use that showing the falsification of the classification of the property. And the status is defined also by the case law that the status there must be a taxable status. I think it's the Frick versus Pennsylvania. The Ohio tax case is really set up real well when an ad valorem tax is basically a tax on property that's used in the calling or occupation. Like I said, you got to understand what taxation is. It's really the big key to really being able to have a conversation with these people. And you can't have a generic. You got to really be based in the code of what the definitions talk about and the actual sections of the things they have to do, like the paperwork they have to have and the returns they have to file. I mean, there have to be returns filed by the so-called taxpayer before they can even create the assessment. So I had a real problem with how they're able to come up with assessments on people's homes. And when you started asking questions, using non-public records requests was the only thing we could come up with to use, and we were like, hey, where's the assessment for this property? And B, where's the statute you're using to create an assessment on this property? And we never got any answers on any of that stuff. I guess it's been about 5 years now, there was a guy around the corner that they sold the tax deed on his house. And they went through the routine, eventually ended up getting this phony writ of possession that basically come and ransack the house and loot it and kill his pets. And then they arrest him for trespassing on the property, claiming he didn't own it no more. So we ended up going to federal court with that one and got the property back. And, it ain't on the tax rolls no more either, you know.
Wow. You want to take some questions?
Yeah.
Okay, let's see. First up here, we've got Illinois. Been waiting a while. Go ahead, Illinois. Did you have a question for our guest speaker? Oh, Illinois. You've been unmuted. Perhaps you have
Hi,
a mute button. There you go.
Hi. Sorry, yeah. I
Hi.
apologize. I had a backup mute on my phone just in case.
Yep,
I didn't want to answer the part.
Well, thank you for that. Go ahead.
Good evening, Angela. This is Greg in Chicago. You might remember me. So,
Hi, Greg.
The question I had was, could you please address for the group the definition of residential as a commercial term as part of why everybody falls into the fly trap of being liable for property taxes? Because private property and residential property are not identical. And I think that you've done enough homework on this that you could probably expound on that pretty nicely for the group. Would you please?
Okay, you just want to kind of know what residential means in the tax code? Is that kind of what you're asking?
No, I want you to explain to folks, if you can, if you're allowed to, if you're not under some binding agreement that doesn't let you, to tell everybody the difference between private property and residential property in terms of most statutes and codes.
Well, according to the tax code, residential has that classification usually when it's being built. And it usually applies mainly to apartment complexes and maybe condominiums sometimes. But that's how it's referred to in the tax code. In other words, let's put it this way. You don't have residential property in accordance with the tax code because that's where you're going. You just don't own land you have a house on.
Right. Well, I'm saying, right. In other words, to me, in my research, residential implies a landlord-tenant relationship, that there's a transitory participant involved that comes and goes, because that's the definition of res and residential. A resident at a hospital is a doctor who just graduated medical school who's hanging out there for a while and then he leaves. That's the only current definition of res and a resident that I find is appropriate to the actual definition of the term. And when we agree, when we confess that we are residents and our property is residential, I believe that we're implying a tenant and landlord relationship. And when the landlord does not appear, the county steps in and holds it as in abeyance. And so there's a presumption that there's somebody that ought to be getting paid for the use of the land. And the county is more than happy to step in and apply themselves as the placeholder. What do you think about that?
Well, I don't think much about that. I just take the attitude that I own my property, I'm the king, and if anyone screws with it, then you just go after them for it, that's all. I have a piece of paper with my name on it, I own it, so that's all I need. No one else owns my property. Just I don't care what they want to call it in their records. That's the way it works.
Well, sure. I know, but, we are living in, post-Civil War, Lever Code, constraints.
Well, once again, I try not to get too filtered up in that stuff. I've heard all the whatever you want to call it, but I just don't go there, man. I go straight at it as though I am the king, I am the sovereign, they're my servants, they're violating my law, and I go after them for it.
Well, the last thing that you want to do is use the word sovereign, because I just got done fighting a 6-month battle in the capital of Illinois with my daughter, who they accused of having some sovereign ties to something. And they totally destroyed her life for 6 months. So you know what? That's not a word you want to use. You want to be a little bit more humble than this.
Well, according to my state constitution, it says clearly I am one of the sovereign people. So when I go to court, I let them know I am one of the sovereign people.
Yes, I know. But what I'm trying to say is let's come up with a better nomenclature. All right? Because when you use that, you're setting off fire alarms. Why set off fire alarms? Let's come up with things that are easier to swallow for the powers that be. And, you know, these are, and as I've always said, and I don't want to monopolize the call, and I'm going to finish this phrase, and I will hang up. Or I'll hang up, but I'll just shut up. And that is, everybody who's in the government serving went to the same high schools and colleges we went to, and we all got stuffed with the same bullshit. Sorry for the swearing. And they started out early getting paid for the bullshit. And we've been not doing that. We all became lawyers and doctors and Indian chiefs and construction folks and other things, musicians. We didn't give a crap about that. But they did, and they went and got paid for it right away, starting from high school or college. And so their whole life is invested in supporting what we learned in high school and college. And now they're not willing as we are, to look at the world in a little bit different way. And so there's a resistance between those who are hired to serve us and those who are being served. Because there's the possibility that their whole ecosystem could collapse if we're right and they're wrong. Okay? And I'm trying to just figure out how to get across this cavern of misunderstanding so that we can all end up in a safe and happy place and not have everybody just like shooting at each other and doing horrible things to each other. Okay, I'm done. Thank you.
Oh, okay, thank you. Moving right along, did you have a comment or anything? Steve, did you want to say something? Or?
That's another reason why I've always waited so long to do these things, you know.
Okay, well,
move on.
Makes it interesting. Okay, next up is Donaldson. Go ahead, you've been unmuted. Do you have a question for Steve? Donaldson, unmute your phone. I unmuted you on this end. Donaldson? Yo, Donaldson. All right, well, when you come back, put your hand back up and I'll unmute you. I don't know where you went. Maybe I go to the bathroom. Next up, Chappie. Hi, Chappie. Nice to see you.
Hey,
How are
Steve,
you feeling?
Pretty good. How you doing?
Good, thank you.
I just want to let everybody know that, you know, there's only a couple people on the planet that I highly respect when it comes to research and development. And Steve is right there on the top of the list. And when I've studied his work, his research and everything that he shared with me, when you look at the regulations, when you look at the regulations and the statutes, like everything else, you got to look at the definitions. And when you see that the definitions are in your favor, you know, title, personal effects, household, commercial use, ownership, allotio, shelter, home, estate, and everything. When you look at that, you put all the pieces in the puzzle together. It's not about I'm the man of the land or I'm a sovereign or any of that stuff. And I'm not criticizing that, but like everything else, there's a time and a place to play a certain tune. And when they're claiming that you owe a tax, they have the burden of proof to show it when you present them breaking their presumptions on all the definitions and how it is really to be applied. And when you put that together, along with with the information that Steve has done his research, and everybody in their states, if you go into your state codes, and the regulations are awesome because they really get explanatory on the whole concept. And when you start using the definition, start learning how you can effectively use the definitions and the law and the Constitution, like Steve says, then they cannot overcome you. In fact, you can go into federal court and basically get a declaratory judgment. And then along with that, with the CAFA report, you know, how the state collects and uses this money they're collecting, I mean, then that's a double whammy. But I appreciate you, Steve. And hang in there with some of these questions and everything. Not that they're bad. The people believe what they want to believe. They fight the way they want to fight. But, you know, when you cut through the fat and you cut through the chase and you get right to the point, you know, it just, the lights come on and it flashes. And I just want to say one thing and then I'll shut up, is that we are starting here in Florida a group that we're looking for people who want to get involved in this, who really want to learn. We're not just going to go and do it and pass it out and people screw it up and step on their tongue and put their foot in their mouth. We want to do this in a proper procedure, and other people in other states that they want to join us, then they're going to have to take the leadership and look into their state, and then we can do a comparison. But if anybody's interested, get in touch with me. I'll put my email in the chat box here in a minute, and say I'm interested in the subject line, and we'll take the time to get back to you. And how you doing there, Charles? Okay, very good. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Well, thanks, Chappie. Next up, let's see here. Southeast Wisconsin. Go ahead. Southeast Wisconsin. Hi.
Hi, Angela.
Do you have a question? Hi.
Yeah, hi. Yeah, Steve, this is Mark in Wisconsin here. I was just curious if you could just give me some information regarding, I'm in a mobile home park, so the property does not belong to me, but the home does. That it resides on, or whatever you want to call it. And I was just wondering, I get charged a tax based on the assessment, of course, on the house itself, but not the property. So is there anything that would give me not as much of an advantage or statutes that would not apply to me, or would it all be the same?
Steve, are you there?
I'm here.
Oh, did you hear the question?
Yeah, I heard the question, man. I had to mute for a second. I forgot to unmute. Now, like I was saying before, if there's no commercial activity being conducted with that particular trailer, there's no way.
Okay, you're floating in and out. I can barely hear you. Are you in the wind or something?
I haven't on it.
You got to get right up into your mic. Can't hear you.
Okay, I'm talking now. How's it sound?
That's better.
Better? Okay. Okay, the question. Trailer. Once again, there's no commercial activity there. There's just no profit making occurring with it. That's the only way it can be taxed.
Okay.
Still comes with duties imposed and all that neat stuff that's in the federal Constitution, and they have a taxable status. And really, the taxable status is declared by the state legislature, where they declare what property can be considered taxable property. And that's why you see the exemption stuff like churches and, literary and scientific and all that kind of stuff, because it's educational, and so the states usually exclude that from that particular phase of taxation. They have a law on taxes, which is another way you have to look at this too. It's funny, here you got a church or something bringing in who knows how many hundreds of thousands of dollars in for just donations, but yet your home is taxable, though. You know what I mean? Like I said, when you start putting common sense with what you're seeing in the tax code, it just doesn't seem to apply to the property the way you're using it. And that's what it's all about, the use of the property. That defines whether or not it holds a taxable status within the state or not. You have the property as a matter of right to private use. The same way they can't tax your electric razor, they can't tax your CD collections, you know what I mean? You know, it's all considered personal private property. There's no commercial nexus with it. That's what taxation's all about, man. That's why you gotta understand what taxation is, man. That's really the key, is really understanding what taxation is based in your code, your tax code, so you can have an educated conversation based in the language of the code.
Well, in other words, I'm sorry to break up, interrupt you, but I was just going to ask you too, what kind of response, if you were to be an activist, if you want to say that word, based on going out like Chappie's alluding to, and being going out there and educating people on the whole taxation issue here, have you got any kind of harassment or somebody trying to put your lights out or trying to threaten you in any way? I mean, in your own experience, what you've been doing and being active in the community, trying to help people out.
Well, no one's messing with me, but I feel like I'm running around crusading downtown. I mean, I keep a pretty low profile, kind of guerrilla warfare. Every couple of years I'd come up and I'd slam them for stealing a car out of someone's carport or stealing at home with a tax deed or something, you know. So they don't mess with me. Why would they? All they do is pay you off stuff that make you go away. That's all you're going to get out of this. You're not going to change the system because some guy files an action. It's just going to require more people going after them for this. And then when the risk management people are wondering why they're paying out $500 million in claims every year, they're going to tell these, hey, stop doing this stuff. Those people are catching on, you know. So, but right now, nobody sues them for it. I mean, most people I know pay property taxes, and they don't question it. They just pay it. They don't even question it. They've been so indoctrinated believing this is just something that we all do to pay our fair share thing, and that's kind of where we're at. Just mind control, brainwashed, and dumbed them all down to thinking that you owe a tax, well, you bought someplace to sleep at, you know, and put your stuff at and relax and watch TV, you know. Okay, but then when we understand what taxation is, how can that be taxable? According to my state constitution, I have the right for me to own property and have people enjoy it and acquire it and sell it and do all these things I want to do with. So how does the tax come and play with that? And the tax code doesn't go there. It just doesn't. And if it does anything, it makes a point to clearly exclude. Even the Internal Revenue Code has a section where it makes it clear that if the appraising collecting officer, if it turns out that the residence, the home, and all comes in play, they actually have to go to a magistrate with the evidence showing that they have to take the home to collect all the money that was the property they've collected on the business doesn't cover, so they need the home. They actually have to have a magistrate hearing before they can do any seizure of the home. Here in Florida, they will create tax certificates. They'll do a tax deed application and sell a tax deed without a day in court. And the process and the statutes makes it real clear. They have to do tax deed foreclosure proceedings. They have to notice the taxpayer. If you're a taxpayer, you're supposed to get 30-day notice before they file a petition to seize the property in the court of general jurisdiction. All that needs language. It's all over the tax code. They never do that. That's a big bad process violation. They're just creating deeds property they don't own and selling it. You know, I mean, if I was doing it, he'd be in prison in 5 minutes. You know what I mean?
Right. No, I agree. And it's just nothing different than the income tax on the same basis, and I'm not going to get off track on it, but what you're saying is pretty much holds true on a lot of other taxation as well. We all just assume under that assumption that because my parents told me and their parents told them before that, and all this information, you know, was passed down, and we just all take it as that it's all factual, and it's really nothing more than a facade.
Yeah, all the other monkeys do it, you know, so what's your problem?
Exactly. Yeah.
So we all do it. Everybody knows you pay taxes on your property, you know, and if you don't, you lose it. Everybody knows that, right?
Right. Yeah.
So that's the average everyday need. My best friends are like that, technically. My family is like that, you know? So, you know, I'd like to say, I ain't going to change anybody. You know? I don't care to change anybody, you know? I'm not going to tell you that I like to play the piano, you should play the piano or something, you know what I mean? So why would I tell you need to know the tax code and you need to stop paying this property tax? When you want to pay it, knock yourself out. You're a free man. You know, while you're at it, send me some money too, right?
Exactly. Yeah, as long as you're handing it out freely.
Yeah. Well, you just reminded me. There's this friend of mine that has a really killer DVD-ROM disc, man, that has a bunch of legal litigation manuals, federal manuals, and if you're in Florida, it's got all the pretrial practices manuals for criminal, positive action manuals, the Internal Revenue Code, statutes at large, a bunch of wonderful books on just court processes. And it has American jurisprudence 2D on it, you know. It's if it wasn't for that, if I didn't have that basic access to that, I don't think I would know 80% of what I know. You got to have access to the legal jurisprudence so you can understand how you have to put this stuff before the court, and that's where it's at. But if somebody was interested in the disc, usually a little donation of about $250. If you want it, get hold of me, and I'll come up with how can we do that. I guess you can email me if you like. If everybody's ready to write down an email address, I'll give you an email address that you could say, hey, I'd like to check out the disc thing, and I'll tell you how to get it. It'd be NASAELP, like NASA, Energy and Logistics and Processing, Emerson Lincoln, at AT&T.net. But the key is the guy was sort of asking earlier about what would I read? Maybe, okay, that's what's
Is that ATT.net?
Yeah, AT&T. No, AT. There you go, AT. That's how it's
Okay, thanks.
So NASA, NASA, technically, National Aeronautics Space Administration, Logistics Processing, and or NASA, Emerson Lincoln Palmer. Great way to remember. And AT.net.
Got it.
But the key is when I read the local and state taxation, that's what really woke me up. I mean, it's like just 500-600 page. You know, when you're reading stuff like that, like a paragraph, and you got these 3 pages of footnotes then, you know. So it's not as bad of a read as it seems. You're going, wow, 600 pages. It's, you know, probably lucky if you got 150 actual readable text that you're going to go through. Of course, I always like to look at the case site, see if I can find Florida stuff. And that was very helpful, because then I could go Google that. You don't even need to be on first or find law no more. You just go to Google Scholar and pop a case in with all the, you know, the numbers and things, and I usually find the syllabus for it, you know. And I can read what the process was about, what the tax process were, and how they handle it, how the training, how the process has to work. Which I've been able to use in complaints to show that this is the way Florida says the tax process has to work. And well, look what these guys are doing. They're collecting money they don't have authority to collect. That's theft. And they don't have any answers for it.
So, Steve, you have to check it to the processor in the local, like the local county that you live in. You take it to that tax assessor, and that's where you challenge him on that? Is that what you were saying?
I would think you would start with where it starts, and from here in Florida, it's the property appraiser. He's got it on the tax roll. That's where it starts. You want to find out how he's able to do that. If you can fill it there, then the rest all goes away. And the tax collector doesn't get it, so you don't send the tax bill if it's not on the assessment roll that the property appraiser creates.
How about services, Steve? Do you lose, let's just say you had a fire. Is somebody going to come? Or are they, you know, I'm just giving you some scenarios that I'm just thinking of. You know, police department, which I really don't care about any of that, but I'm just, for the audience, I'm just kind of thinking, all right, all the local services, do you get any of those things, an ambulance if you had a heart attack and somebody had to, you know, come and pick you up, you know?
Yeah. Don't need to drag that question out too far. Yeah, under their charters. That's why the Constitution grants them the privilege to be a charter corporation, so they can provide services for the people in the community. That's what the whole ideology of government's for. You can't be excluded from that because you're not paying these people someone else's tax. Okay.
Okay. All right, that's all I got, Steve. Thank you very much for your answers.
Did you like that one?
Yeah.
Okay. I think
that's great.
Yeah, and another thing is look in your charters, man. If they're awesome the way they're written, especially the statute that set up how they're posted. I find they'll be posted.
You're wiggling in and out again.
Yeah, I don't know why I wiggle in and out. Usually the thing works really well.
Now you're doing better.
Oh, well. I guess it's something that comes and goes, I guess, so we'll just have to deal with it.
See that? Then you say again, it just happened. Is your battery running low, maybe, or?
Oh, full charge.
Okay. All right, Southeast Wisconsin, thank you for that.
You bet. Thank you, Angela.
Mm-hmm. Okay, we're going to move on. Let's see here. We've got Patriot 1. Go ahead, Patriot 1. You've been muted. Hi.
Thank you, Angela. And
you're welcome.
Good to hear you, Steve. Always like hearing you. You answered most of my questions that I've come up with. I did want to mention the gentleman was talking about the mobile home and on someone else's land, like I have. Their land, the mobile home park, they are the property owner, and they probably won't let him have his trailer on their land without a sticker. So he's kind of stuck there till he gets on his own property. I just wanted to mention that to him because he's got to go by the landowner's rules, and that's one of their rules. Well, you got to play by their rules till you get your own place. And I finally, after several years of listening and reading and listening, but mostly working, I finally got to where I can actually do things, and I'm glad Chappie mentioned he wants to get people together in Florida. I'm on the West Coast. And for your phone, Steve, I had a buddy who lived by Disney World and SeaWorld, and where his house was for about a quarter-mile circle, nothing could get through. I think the T-Mobile. Everyone else had a hard time, and that sounds like how you're coming in and out. But could be the storm going through. I don't know. So, with all that blab, would you go through one of your encounters with having a vehicle towed and actually getting the towing company to pay off a claim as opposed to a government official? And thank you very much.
So what you want to hear about the code enforcement school in the car story, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's a good one because it kind of lets people know what it's not just the government employees, but the cop tells the tow truck guy to steal your truck, which is actually what he's doing. Hey, steal that truck. But they put it in different words, and the tow truck guy thinks he's got every right to do it, when actually it's just pirates stealing your stuff.
That is true. Yeah, we had an incident here where somebody came, code enforcement had done some view on this guy's car, which was a really nice car. I mean, it's a 20-year-old K car, one of those old Dodge, I forget what else they say. The K car was really what we called it, and that's what it was. Anyhow, code was messing with it, didn't like the tag he had on it, which who cares, and that's not code's business, up in his carport of his home. And one day came and took it, we got it on video, sued him in state court using a repleasant, and we just went after the tow company because they were the most vulnerable. And did we put them in a position where the city had to protect them, and they couldn't. The city couldn't put nothing on the table to show that they had any authority to tell these idiots to go up there and drag that car out there and take off with it. And within days after they took the car, the tow company had converted title to it. When their statutes makes it clear in the state statutes and even in their city contract that they have to hold on to these things for at least 60 days, notify owners, all that kind of stuff, So we really had them by the yin-yang, you might say, and they went to the early settlement table. They knew they couldn't sit there in front of a jury and explain where they get their authority. And what I slapped them with was the Orlando Charter here. We have a section under Chapter 13, Powers of the City General, Section 64. And it makes it pretty clear here that it is hereby established and determined that it will be full in effect in any and all land and property owned or controlled by the City of Orlando, outside the city as a corporation. And that the ordinances will be in full effect in violations of any said violations on such property. In other words, you can only violate a city ordinance when you're on city property. That's what it boils down to. But these guys like to come out into the neighborhoods and screw with people out mowing the grass and where they park their cars and then threaten if they're going to steal your car or take your stuff off if you don't, do whatever they want you to do with it. And they get away with this all the time, but once again, it's another color of law action. They're violating your rights under color of ordinances. And if you know how to write the pleadings and get another thing I just have a wonderful book that was my Bible, actually. It's something called like a federal litigation guide for federal attorneys, and it was 600 pages of nothing but how to write this civil liberties suit, under 42, 1983. It's all annotated, it's all case law backed up, where the courts have pretty well laid out what the elements have to be, what you got to prove in order to put a case like that together. And with the property tax stuff, it's basically the same thing. You own the property as a matter of right. They have no record that there's any commercial activity going on, like a business license or occupational license or a corporate charter. That's what has to be there before they can even get on the tax rolls. But that's why you have to be falsifying the classification of property in order to get all these properties on the tax roll. And if you go after them for it, state statutes, we have an 817 one I like, and then you have the federal 2071, 2073, which works for state actors for anyone that falsifies or mutilates a record of some kind and for a benefit of another of some kind. And we have the official misconduct statute here in Florida, 836, I think, or 838 statute, that all record for the benefit of another is, third-degree felony, And that's what they're doing. And every time we put it on the rack, man, they haven't been able to defend it. They never sat down and showed any statutes in plain language that, hey, you're a taxpayer. They got some language for the everyday man who buys a house or whatever is now a taxpayer and knows this commercial liable on taxes and municipal corporation. So it kind of goes back to what I said earlier. Why did the founding fathers pick up muskets, start shooting redcoats so we could just let municipalities rob people's homes with phony papers? No, it's not the way it works, and it's not written that way on paper at all. And the jurisprudence backs up the tax code of how it has to be implemented. And so it's a great resource to use to prove your color of law action based on the tax code, how they're creating false certificates under this statute, false tax deeds or illegal tax deeds under this statute, and you just lay it all out. And they have to answer you. When you file your complaint, you have to file an answer and show you're all wrong. Here's a statute that says every man, it says all the homes, houses. Well, once again, the tax code could easily be written and to read that way. Even when you read the criminal statutes, too, they have a couple places where right away they make it clear that the individual person is defined as a human being and not a corporation and all those other entities, So they can clearly define the human being in the criminal code, and how come they can't define it in the tax code? How come they can't call it your house? Instead it's a single-family dwelling unit. When was the last time you heard anyone say, let's go over, Angela's single-family dwelling unit and watch TV? How come they couldn't put the word house in there if this tax code was truly meant to apply the way it was? And then to fall within the scope of the statutory construction elements, it has to be written in plain language to where whoever it applies to can understand exactly what he has to do. That's why when you read the tax code, you don't understand it because it has nothing to do with you, really. It's meant for corporate attorneys who are handling taxes and stuff for corporations. That's what the tax code's written for. Not the average everyday man who's just walking down the street and decides to buy a little piece of land. I don't care if it's 5,000 acres with a 50-bedroom mansion. If all you're doing is eating, sleeping, and all that other stuff there, and just living there, there's no way that can be on the tax roll. They only get away with it because the American people don't know what taxation is. They don't understand it. For obvious reasons.
Chappie just left, but for those of you that would like to join in his group, he wanted me to give out his email address on the phone. So let me do that now. It's AmericanLiberties.llc@gmail.com. Again, that's AmericanLiberties.llc@gmail.com. It's also typed into the chat, so if you need it later, it's in the transcript of the chat. Okay. And now, we've got 3 more people in line who want to ask you questions, but I wanted to ask you that somebody mentioned this on the chat. Is there any way that we could go into the Florida recorder's office and see where your property is no longer on the tax rolls, or is there a record of it or anything? People, want to see it to believe it, I guess.
Well, yeah, and I've been asked that before, and unfortunately, the privacy thing's where I have an issue there. Mm-hmm. And the other issue is, even if I showed you 100 properties off the tax rolls, how would that help you understand how to get yours off the tax roll?
Well, people don't believe it. That's all. That's why they want to see it. Is there any ones they could see that? What would it look like if we were to go to the recorder's office and put your address in, and we drew up your property? What would it say? No longer taxable, or zero, or how would it look?
It's zero. It's a zero. Everything's all zeroed out there.
But it's there.
Yeah, it's there. It's all zero. I've met people do that. They rode by the house or something and go, hey, I was out there washing the truck or something. Hey, that's funny. I looked at this also. Let's see the house. Let's see whatever. And it's like, but it's not da-da-da. And so we started a great conversation, and I started explaining to them why it wouldn't be there. Has no commercial status, so why would it be on the tax roll?
That's so cool. All right, let's see here. Okay, Donaldson is back. There you go, Donaldson. Did you have a question for our special guest speaker?
Yes, I do, and thank you for unmuting me. Angela, I hope you're doing well, and I hope you're doing well. And do you think about the value of how words play off of each other with regard to government rulemaking? And that's my first question. I have another one. Just 2 questions.
Okay, well, I think that's a quickie. Jurisprudence makes it clear that government can only control what government created, right? So all the codes, rules, regulations only apply to government functions. It has nothing to do with private everyday man. Never has, never did, and can't. Is there more? Is that okay?
Well, you said they don't apply to man, but
I won't
man created them.
I wouldn't say they.
I guess my question is that do you think about the value of how the words, each word, plays off of the other word, and excuse me. Hello. Okay,
Yeah,
so
go ahead.
sorry, no, someone else was trying to overtalk me, not you guys. Sorry. So again, I'll repeat the question. Do you think about the value of how words play off of each other with regard to government rulemaking? I wrote that down because it's important for me to know if you are dependent on their statutes, right, and you're relying on their language to be valid enough for them to have to stand by, then you must value at least a little bit how the words, one word plays off of the next word, especially being as how they have specific construction rules when it comes to statutory, construction, So they definitely have to, abide by what one word means, and compared to the other word, okay? And the reason why I'm saying that is because in the Barron's Law Dictionary, the 5th edition, there's this word called nociter associus, which is Latin, and it means it is known by its associates. And under this rule of statutory construction, the meaning of a word in a statute is ascertained in light of the meaning of the word with which it is associated. And they give case law, so it's 250 NW 2nd 412, and then 413. So 250 NW 2nd 412, 413 is the case law when you can go and look up about that. And then you can also see here that two or more words in a statute when they're grouped together when two or more words are in a statute are grouped together and ordinarily have a similar meaning but are not equally comprehensive, the general word will be limited and qualified by the specific word. For example, like the justice. So, again, back to my original question, do you think about the value of how the words play and then your claim as it regards the validity of their statutes and how they have to abide? Thank you.
Well, I guess, yeah. I mean, I try not to overcomplicate it, and I just read the statute the way it says, and let them show me how they're. I guess I really don't understand how you're going with that question, but I try not to complicate this thing or make it overcomplicated. It's actually fairly simple.
Right. But what if they railroad you, and even though you're bringing up the law that they're trying to, exercise over you?
What do you mean railroad you do?
Just like you could bring up whatever law that they're supposed to abide by, and the justice or, the clerk or whatever, they file paperwork, out of order and, out of the customary, So I'm just saying they're under the office of, administrative office of the U.S. courts, that's ultimately one of the last places we can seek, to exhaust our remedies. The former judicial counsel, I forget the name of it, but yeah, go seek out the administrative offices of the United States courts if you want to finalize your exhaustion. But yeah, I'm just.
No, but you know what? They can't railroad you if you know this stuff, really well, and you can speak up and say no, no, this or that or the other. Am I right, Steve? I mean, if you know the stuff, if you learn it as well as you have, and they say something that's going to throw you under the bus, you can come right back with, well, I'm going to do this if you do that, or you can't do this because I can do this, or whatever, right?
Yeah, to me it's almost as common sense as me trying to tell you that I'm Jimmy Page from Led Zeppelin. Okay?
Right.
But I don't have a voice, I'm not 60 or almost 70 years old, and I can't play guitar, so right away I'm not Jimmy Page, and I'm giving you the yin-yang, and the other people around you are going to see that, hey, and you called old Steve on that, huh? He ain't no Jimmy Page, so you just embarrassed me in front of a bunch of people because I couldn't prove I was Jimmy Page, right?
Right. There, I muted you out, Donaldson, because there's a lot of noise going on, and while he was answering, you didn't need to be unmuted, so.
I should have muted myself. I apologize for that.
It's okay.
Sorry about that. Thank you. So I'm not trying to make it too complicated, and so I know that maybe one of my niches is for the comprehension of the English language, and I think you have your approach seems pretty simplistic. You're trying to relate to other individuals who may or may not have a grasp on legal consideration. Or even what it means to be legally competent. Hello?
You have to learn it. You can't go in there without
have to learn it. I know who I am. Okay? But see, the issue, what I'm saying to you guys is that quantum grammar, right, is going to trump the will of the people, which is, that was my second question. Not about quantum, really. But see, I didn't even want to talk about quantum, but I phrased my first question the way I did so that way I wouldn't have to say quantum grammar at all. Because I was just asking about the value of how each word plays off of the other one. That was a total quantum grammar question, but you guys didn't really get it. So I'm going to move on to my second question. Oh, crap. Forget it. They'll come back. Hey, you can mute me if you want to, you guys. But ultimately, I just thank you for bringing me on. I do have a lot to offer, I think, and especially when it comes to, the issue of language. So, but whatnot. Yeah, hey, guy, I really appreciate what you're doing, and keep on coming out. Here's that question. The people's will. Do you believe that all statutes, and I'm so glad I was able to ask this, that all statutes are of the people's will?
No.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. Bad statutes. Just the problem is they're being misused. The whole system is being misused. It goes back to the statement I said earlier. I believe most Americans are just really ignorant. They have no idea how their government operates on paper. Most people know it from watching TV, the History Channel, and the news, and judge somebody on a CNN program. That's all they know about the law. They got no idea what filing a complaint is, how the court systems work, how to use the motions and the writs, which is mere like tools in a toolbox. Discovery. Do you need it? Do you need interrogatories? Do you need admissions? Do you need to do depositions? You need to understand how the court systems work. And don't care what happens in the lower court. Just set the record up for appeal. You'll win it there if you understand how the system works on paper. It's no different than anything else. Like I was saying earlier, you're sitting in a 747 with a Cessna flight manual. You're not going to get that airplane off the ground, are you? You got to be reading the manuals. You got to understand how how the court systems work on paper, not the crap people tell you. Don't believe nothing you can't prove yourself in your own research. Kind of goes back to a little while ago. If you can't figure out how I got there with all the crap I've put out over the years on it, then, like I said, I don't care if I show you 5,000 pieces of property off the tax roll. How's it going to help you go get yours off the tax roll? So that's really where you're at, man. Because it is illegal. They are stealing money. And if you frame the issues properly, put it on paper in accordance with the way the procedures are written in clear language in litigation manuals, just acquire them all. That's why that disc is a wonderful thing if you really want to learn how to do it. You got to get the owner's manual. You got to get the directions, and figure and understand it to make sure that you're doing it properly. And it's not hard. It's not easy, but it's not difficult. Law can't be written in a way that you have to be a 20-year-old scholar in a law library to figure it out. The law has to be written simply because it's written by the people. And when you start reading these things, legislative enactment sections and all the chapters, it makes it clear what they're talking about. If you just read it, it's easy to make it clear that they're not talking about you and me. And actually, when it gets down to it, I don't think 95% of the statutes have any